all I remember is just saying over and over again, like, just save my baby. And she just took both of her hands, like, on either side of my face. She just said, "We will, sweetie."
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Birth Story podcast. If you are joining for the first time today, I'm your host, Alexis C. Girl mom, angel mama to one of the sweetest boys in heaven, birth trauma and uterine rupture survivor, and former NICU mama. Here you will have the opportunity to ask and have your burning questions answered by professionals, feel connected to other women's experiences as we normalize the different aspects of this journey we are on as moms. The real and raw moments of healing are shared here as we navigate loss, embrace strength, and find hope again while learning to live after loss. Please note the topics discussed on this podcast are for educational purposes only. Please see your personalized medical professional if you have any questions or concerns that arise from listening, including diagnosis and treatment. Okay, Kylie, I'm honored to have you on here. I cannot tell you enough how much I appreciate your honesty on your personal socials of kind of walking us all through your journey of delivering and now raising Miracle Miles.
Yes. Well, it's also selfish because it's for me too. It's as like even you doing this podcast, it's kind of finding, I guess, you have to make meaning out of your grief and trauma to survive it.
100%.
So
Yeah.
also it's just for me too. So I'm glad it's resonated with people and helped other people because it was mostly just to help myself.
I love that. And honestly, the pureness of that, it radiates 100%. With that being said, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name's Kylie. I live in Vegreville with my husband, Jackson. I'm a dental hygienist, married to a farmer, and I have Miracle Miles at home. He's 18 months as of December 20th. So
time flies.
Is that officially toddler? Actually, is it 18 months toddler or 19 months toddler?
I don't know. I just think I just started calling her a toddler at some point. Okay. I just recently changed.
Because we have toddler tantrums, so we'll go with that.
That checks out for that age, for sure. Can you walk us through your labor and delivery?
I would love to. So, Miles was born full term. I was 39 and 3, I believe. His due date was June 24th, and I had him June 20th. And the day before I did, if this was a tried and true, there's so many methods that people talk about to try to get labor going. I curb walked for like an hour before with Arlo, my dog. And then that night I was feeling just crampy, but I didn't think that was really anything. Went to bed, and then, I woke up because my water broke in the middle of the night. And then I went to the bathroom, and there was some green on the towel. So I'm like, oh, we got meconium, baby. Let's go.
Love that. Love that.
So, I just turned the light on to Jackson. I'm like, it's go time. Let's go. I'm still pretty chill because everyone has prepped me that it takes a while. Like, your first is a long labor. Contractions, did the birth course. They're going to be like 5 minutes in between. That's when you start getting ready. And then I was like, oh, I have a contraction. So I started my timer, and then it was like a minute later, and I was like, oh, I have another contraction. Like, that's quick. So we got in the car. It should be over like an hour and 15 to the Royal Alex, but we got there in 35 minutes because
oh my gosh.
And usually I'm a very cautious, like, Jackson, watch, like, too much of a passenger driver. But I was like, kick it, like, pedal to the metal, baby, like,
this baby is coming now.
It was just quick and intense. They were instantly a minute apart, and Jackson was like, those are coming on pretty quick, babe, in the car. I'm like, yeah, we need to get there.
This is not textbook at all.
This is not what everyone told me was going to happen. And we even debated stopping in Sherwood Park, but because I was like, am I having this baby in the car? Like, so we kept going, made it to the Alex, and they checked me, and I was already 9 centimeters dilated, and I was like, I feel like I am. This baby.
My goodness.
So they got me in a delivery room right away, and were asking me if I want an epidural. And I was like, yes, please. And they kept kind of coming in and checking in to make sure. And I was like, yes, I do. I would like an epidural. And they just said, like, we can give you one, but it might not kick in until after you've delivered. I was like, that's okay. Let's give it a go. So I did get one. And then it was kind of smooth sailing. We just sat there for it because I had this is the funny thing too. I'm such a type A planner. I had those like saved things on Instagram, the saved whatever. Had a whole like birth tips. So then I'm sitting there just going over it and telling Jackson, I'm asking the nurse, can I get the peanut ball? I'm gonna turn on my side and do, you were like
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
things. I'm just like, my perfect birth is so
It's
near.
blissful, right? It's so blissful.
And I'm just telling the nurse, I mean, obviously she knew, and I said, I'm like, obviously the baby's health comes first, but let's do some passive descent. To me, the worst thing that was going to happen was I was going to tear. So let's get everything as good as we can. And yeah, we just sat there and we were all kind of laughing because I had the huge bag of all the things as the first time mom. And the nurse was like, this is so quick. You're not going to use any of that. And we're like, I know, this is so funny. And then a couple times, what are the things on your stomach called that?
The Toco monitors.
Okay.
That's what I call them.
Okay.
Yeah. Picking up baby's heart rate, mom's contractions,
yeah,
all that. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was measuring baby's heart rate, and Miles' heart rate was always fine. It was 120-ish. And a couple times, just me moving with the peanut ball, it would adjust or like move off a little bit. Mm-hmm. And she would come in and readjust it. And it's so funny because I'm just so ignorance is bliss to me. I was like, this is a little overkill. Like, we know I'm healthy, baby's healthy. You don't need to come in and adjust this every time. And then, it was about 6:30 in the morning. And it wasn't my OB. My OB was actually on holidays. So the OB that had just been coming in and checking on me asked me because shift change is 7. Was that for you too? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 7 to 7.
Yeah. So shift change was 7. So she asked me, she said, you're ready to push. Shift change, is happening soon. So either like we can deliver the baby right now, or the new OB will come in and introduce herself and deliver the baby. And I didn't want to be inconveniencing anyone. I was like, you go off, honey. Like, let's just I'm fine here. If you think everything's fine, like, let's just keep passive descent. When the new OB comes on, we can deliver the baby. There's no rush. We're calm in here.
Yeah.
So calm. And then, we waited till shift change. The nurses did their change off. So the one came in and just, no one was concerned because everything was like going so well and everything was healthy. So the nurse just came in and quickly introduced the new nurse taking over her shift. And then it was only, I'm going to get facts wrong, but it wasn't that long after. I'm trying to think of timeline. Probably a couple minutes after that shift change that whatever you called them, the heart rate monitors, started to beep. And the heart rate had dropped from 120 to 56, just like instantly. Mm-hmm. So the nurse came in and just asked me to flip onto my hands and knees, which I did. And I was not panicked at all. Because like I said, I think they had just like disconnected before it. The heart rate didn't actually drop, but I don't know. You don't think anything's gonna. I'm still just living in my I'm about to have my baby.
Yeah.
Full stage. So I'm like, oh, it's probably. And she was saying too. She's like, it's just probably a positional thing. It happens, and I knew that baby's heart rate can drop a little bit as they're entering the birth canal, but probably not to 56. But so I went on my hands and knees. And it didn't come back up. So she got me to flip back over on my back. And at that point, the OB had come in. See, everything's a little fuzzy. I don't know if it's like that for you too, but
Yep. No, 100%.
from my recollection, then the OB came in and it started to get a little frantic. Like they were just kind of like, "Hey, we need to get this baby out now." So they just told me to push. So all of my Instagram birth tips went out the window. Where I'm like,
Yep. In that moment,
"I'm gonna
nothing else matters.
I exhale, and we're gonna make sure." I was just like blue in the face, holding my breath, pushing it
You're
because we
like,
were
just
like,
get this baby out
yeah, they
now.
were kind of like I could feel the urgency starting to rise
Yeah.
with everyone. More people start trickling in, and it's like push, like you have to push, like keep pushing. So I'm just like, okay, I am pushing as hard as I can.
Hmm.
And again, Kate, we were going to talk about the charts, but this is where it was nice to read that. To me, my recollection is I pushed for a minute or two.
Yeah.
Then, upon getting my chart, I actually pushed for about 8 minutes, which seems so long. To me, I thought it was very quick.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, that. Oh gosh, I'm gonna cry.
No, you're okay. You're allowed. It's such an emotional thing to look back on in the
Yeah,
heaviness of it all, right?
yeah, that. I just, I think I talked to you about it as well, but just like that nurse,
Hmm.
I, I just remember her next to me, and she was on my right hand side, and she just kept staring at the heart rate monitor, and I could just like I could sense her worry, and
Yeah.
just like feel her staring at it, and
And as scary as that was for you in that moment, she's there doing her job, right? Like
yeah,
that was her job. And, the fact that you were even picking up on that just shows like how on edge she was and ready to jump on a
yeah,
decision, right?
I know. I don't know her name. I don't remember. I
Yeah.
can't remember her face or anything, but I'm just so grateful for her. Um,
They're so special. So
yeah,
special.
she just, yeah, and then she just kept shaking her head. Like I'm trying to push and focus straight ahead and listen to the OB who's telling me to push. So I'm
Hmm.
just trying my hardest. And I
Hmm.
can just, but in the corner of my eye, I'm seeing her like shaking her head. I'm like, what is happening? And yeah, then she's the one who finally spoke up and was just like, we have to call this. We have to call this. So then the OB was like, yeah, okay. And
Sorry, your nurse said that we have to call it?
yeah,
Oh, that just
yeah,
gave me full body
I
chills.
know.
And we've talked about this before,
Yeah, like we've
and
talked
like,
about this, but like,
oh, every time yeah, I get so emotional for you.
yeah,
And in that moment, your team did what they needed to do,
yeah,
right? And like you spoke on the charts, and I remember you sending me bits and pieces of it and us trying to just kind of piece together to make sure that they absolutely did everything they needed to
yeah.
do. And
I know it's so hard not to question every hindsight. You
yes,
can't change it, but
no, and it doesn't matter if, for me, if the birth ends in loss or it ends up a diagnosis similar to yours or any type of birth trauma, it is so subjective, right? And I think for me personally, requesting my chart was such a pivotal moment in my journey. And I feel like everybody needs to know that they have the right to access those charts, right?
yeah,
And,
I had no idea until you told me
no.
and gave me the link.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
It's like,
I'm
this is your story. And like you said, you don't remember everything. And so, even if it can kind of get you answers to some questions, like, I think that is huge.
yeah, it is, and it comes with
Mhm.
obviously another layer of grief reading it
Yes.
and as yourself
Yes.
as the patient, and
Yes.
you read all of their notes on what happened, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's you have to give yourself grace when you do read
You do.
that,
And you have to
and
be so patient with yourself. And
yeah,
especially, like, you have no medical background, right? Like,
yeah,
you are in dentistry, like, not in a labor and delivery room ever. So you're going to have such a different outlook too when you open those pages and
yeah,
see. everything that's recorded there, right?
Yeah. So yeah,
Sorry, keep going.
she's the she's my little, like, saving angel. Um, but
Yes.
yeah, from there, I don't have a ton of memory, and I don't know if that's just a part of, like, of my trauma or just
Yeah.
a defense, a saving mechanism.
It's a trauma response. I have spent my fair share of
Yeah.
hours with my therapist, and there are some moments of that day that I remember as if they happened this morning, and the rest, not a clue. And
Yeah, it's
it's your
odd.
body's way of protecting itself,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
like, thank God we have that in some sense.
yeah, I know. A all I remember is it's pretty much just chaos.
Hmm.
It's when it's true emergency, life or death, there's no, like, "Okay, you're going for a C-section now, we'll get your" it's like, we're not even talking, we're just, like pretty sure my
No.
head bounced back on the bed from it being, like,
Yep. The clock starts ticking,
yeah,
right? And you're
the
running at a
words
time
are flying over
faster
your
than,
head, there's, like, 10 more people in the room.
yeah.
So I don't really have any, like, any visual memory. I can't remember being taken from delivery to OR.
Hmm.
I just have auditory memory, just, like, the sounds and
Yeah. Oh, the sounds are deafening,
yeah,
aren't they?
it's silent, but it's not
Yeah.
like they're trying to be calm for you.
Yeah.
And again, oh gosh, I'm gonna keep
You're
on.
allowed. I'm holding all of the
I know,
space for everything that you need to feel.
yeah. Um, Again, it's just I'm so grateful to the nurses.
Mhm.
Well, but like there was an older nurse again. I have like no idea what her name is or what she looks like. Like these are such important people to me, and I have no idea. Which is like it's cool too if you are listening and you're a labor and delivery nurse. Just if you've had a patient like me who's had a traumatic experience, just like what those little supports mean.
Mhm. They mean everything in those moments, right?
Yeah,
Especially when her decision saved your son's life.
yeah,
Like, that's not just a simple decision or an outcome, right? It's
yeah,
huge.
yeah. So the other nurse, again, no, don't know who it is, but she was an older nurse, and she just like grabbed my hand, and she was just really sweet, just trying to like keep me calm. And yeah, I just all I remember is just saying over and over again, like, just save my baby. And she just took both of her hands like on either side of my face. She just said, "We will, sweetie." And then yeah, I went under general, so the rest is
Oh my god.
no memory. But when I
So, sorry.
no
When you woke up from general, Miles was in the NICU already?
no, well,
Or was
when
he
I woke
still
up,
with
it was
you?
like a movie.
Yeah.
I'm on my back, obviously, and it was just the
Yeah.
fluorescent lights of the OR,
Mhm.
and your eyes are kind of blinking, coming to, and there's just like five shadowed heads around me because they're underneath
Mhm.
fluorescent lights. So I'm like, I can't make anything out. It's just these floating shadow heads.
Yeah.
And they pretty much just told me right away, like, I'm just coming to, I don't know who it was giving me the news, the doctor, like the one who did the C-section, or I'm not 100% sure, but they were just like, you had a son. He's like very sick.
Oh my
Yeah, just told me that he'll likely be in the NICU for weeks.
god. Mhm.
And they were just like unsure of brain damage, but suspected it. And they wouldn't know more until like we could do testing. But
So did they know right away what his diagnosis was, or it was later on that you've kind of found
no,
out?
yeah. So after that, they just wheeled him by. So Jackson was just left in the delivery room. So I honestly think he had it worse than me.
He
And
wasn't even in the OR with you?
no, he was just left in the delivery room because it was
Oh
too
my god.
It's too chaotic. They're just trying to save the baby.
I didn't
Not,
even realize that. I
yeah,
don't know if I just assumed
yeah.
that
No,
he was
he
able
was
to be
there by
there.
himself for I
Oh,
think like half an hour, just
jeez.
like sitting there. I'm like, at least I was under general and didn't know what was going on.
You're like, I had a good sleep, but
Yeah, he
in
was
that
just
that moment,
he just saw them like wheel me out in that chaos, and then yeah, half an
oh,
hour ish later, we do kind of joke about this because we were like, no one wanted to tell him what happened. So the first nurse or someone came in and just said the surgery went good, and I think that's kind of all they said. So Jackson was like, "Oh, sweet," because technically the surgery, like I was fine. Like,
yeah, the actual C-section is
yeah,
fine, but
like on a technicality, the C-section was okay. So Jackson was like, "Okay, sweet." And then a couple minutes later, like another nurse or someone came in and just said, "Do you want to come meet your son?" And Jackson said, he's like, "Rude. We were keeping gender a surprise. I wanted to find out." And they were probably thinking, that is the least of your concerns. But they just asked, "Do you want to come meet your son?" And Jackson was like, "No, I'll wait for Kylie. Like, I want to do that together. So I'll wait till
so you were in the recovery room at this
I
point?
think I was still under, like, they were sewing me up, but I was still under general. I hadn't been to
Oh,
yet
okay.
or anything.
Yeah.
And so then finally, a third, I think the actual doctor or someone came in. But we're like, they're all out in the hallway, like, "I don't want to tell him. You tell him."
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah,
Who wants
honestly.
to go tell dad? Oh my gosh.
And the third one came in and just told him, like, "If you want to come meet your son, you do have to do it now." Kind of like, this is what happened.
Yeah.
He was without oxygen for 17 minutes or whatever it was. I'm sure that
Yeah.
that's just me in hindsight, knowing
Yeah.
that.
No, it was long enough.
Yeah. So they just said we have to take him up to the NICU. So if you want
Mm.
to meet him, you have to come do it now. So he did go gown up and meet him. And then, yeah,
I feel
sorry, there's gonna be
like
lots of breaks in this one.
no. Stop apologizing. You are the last person that needs to apologize here. Oh my goodness. You delivered at the Alec?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just see the inside of that OR that you were in.
Mm, yes.
The
I
same
can't. So,
place.
but yeah.
I I did not know that Jackson was not able to be with you in that moment, which adds like a whole other
I mean,
realm.
yeah, I was under
And
Jackson
how is
for like
he doing with that? Like,
pretty good. He had it,
yeah.
I think, honestly, initially, he kind of had it worse in a way, I think, because of that. But
Mhm.
he's good now.
Yeah.
He's good. I mean, we will
Okay.
always carry it, but yeah.
Yep.
So yeah,
I'm just so thankful that hopefully in a few weeks
I know. I'm
you
like, this
guys
is all
a
this
totally
is
different
timing for. I'm like
experience.
a few
Yeah.
weeks away. I'm like the hormones and emotions are high over here.
No. You guys deserve this so
Yeah,
so much.
yeah. It'll be hopefully a very healing experience. But
Yes.
yeah, then
Oh.
we basically they just like set us up in our good old like trauma suite, and I'm like, we did get a nice room with a private
Okay, there's a
bathroom and
bonus. There's a bonus.
the one bonus. So yeah, they got us all set up in there. And I don't know how long, I think it was like a few hours later that um I went up to see him. I don't really remember that. Like I just have memories of being so disheveled those first
Mhm.
couple days. Not realizing that I am still in, you see those people in the elevators in their hospital gowns and stuff. And I'm like, I was that person I'm like, was my butt out walking to, I don't even know. There's like blood on my gown. I'm like walking barefoot. My feet are squishing. Just in like full trauma grief. Not even, people are probably like, ooh, they're going through it.
Yep, they've seen some stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And on the third day, I changed. No, but
I'm proud of you for changing.
yeah,
I don't care how long it took. You did it.
you don't even, yeah, there was, I just have that memory of after however many hours, I was like, I'm still in this hospital gown. I need to get out of it. But yeah, so we went to SOM. So what essentially they call it HIE. I
Okay.
have a, you know what? I always pronounce encephalop. And let me, are we allowed to use other things on?
Oh, yeah. Whatever you need to do.
Okay.
Fact checking. We're
Yeah,
fact
I'm
checking.
fact checking on the spot. Okay, it's,
encephalopathy.
did you get hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy?
Okay. So that's when baby
Essentially,
is cut off from oxygen.
they just call it HIE because that's
Yep.
easier.
No, I like that. Okay.
Oh, it's essentially just lack of oxygen. I guess I didn't even see. I'm too busy in the feels of what happened. So I haven't even said I had a knot in my umbilical cord.
Okay.
So that wasn't it's not
Oh, sorry. When you say knot, do you mean like a true
a
knot?
true knot. Yeah. That's what my
Okay.
OB kept saying where
Yeah. I've
she
had a
said,
few girlfriends lately that have had that, and their OBs have actually been like, take a picture of this. Like, this is so rare.
have yeah. Is there something?
Yes.
Yeah, my OB said it is so knots and cords are common, but for it to become a true knot is
Yeah.
extremely rare.
Yeah.
So essentially, because Miles was in the birth canal, so everything's getting squished and tightened, and I think he had turned just at the perfect angle, and the cord was around his shoulder, so it took that slack away.
Mhm.
And then him, like good old passive descent that I was working so hard on as he was, entering the birth canal. You could not recreate it if you tried, type of thing. It just
Mhm.
made that knot that had been in the cord tighten off completely. So that's what caused him to lose his oxygen supply. So yeah, by the time from getting my charts and records, just to have the numbers from the time that his heart rate dropped, I put minutes, and I think it was another 9 minutes for the C-section, which is really amazing that they can do emergencies like so quickly.
Yeah.
I pushed.
You were in the
Honest,
best place you possibly could have been.
yeah. So he was without oxygen for 17 minutes. So it really is amazing that he was even alive.
That is
I mean,
incredibly amazing.
very barely alive, but
Yeah.
his
But he's here.
yeah, his APGAR scores were 1, 1, and 2.
Wow.
So he
And
only
for those of you who don't know, a normal APGAR score is like that 8, 9.
yeah. So
So
we
that
only had
is
one thing off of the whole chart that was
yeah.
basically from him being a stillborn, and it was just a
Yeah.
very, very slight pulse. Like he was. So they essentially just like epinephrine, CPR, revived him, oxygen tube, blood transfusions, the whole 9 yards, whatever they could do.
He got the platinum
He
treatment.
got the platinum treatment, my boy. So lucky. I
What a
know, like
stinker.
Camille, like this is life. I'm okay. Let's
Yeah, sorry, Mom.
and
You
then
don't have that on those Pinterest checklists.
yeah, this was not a part of the plan. And then they put them in cooling for 72 hours. So they essentially, he's just laying in, if you can imagine the NICU bed.
I can.
And then they have them covered. So we couldn't really see him. Like we'd be able to peek at him. But they essentially want that covered. They cool HIE babies for 72 hours. And the hope is that it kind of reduces brain injury or the severity of brain injury because it brings down inflammation, keeps the body in that like hypothermic state so that their brain and the inflammation can be lower. And it was just Miles had seizures for the first 24 hours, kind of on and off. The worst part, I don't even know if it was worse being there or not being there. Like it's so sad to be there. But then when you're not there, you're like, what's happening up there? But I don't want it. It's such a complicated feeling. I don't know how you felt.
For me, it was such a mind game. Like the thought of just leaving my baby somewhere and trying to go get rest or trying to eat or any of those things. Like, it felt so wrong for me.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
It's
to just leave my baby in
it's
the like,
such
I
an
trusted his
unnatural thing.
nurses.
It's so unnatural, and I hadn't been a
Yes.
mom yet, so it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was because then you're also then I mean, we stayed at the Alex, until Friday, I think. We wanted to wait until he was out of cooling, so that we
Mhm.
could, like, hold him and have that moment.
Yep.
Mm, and then we got set up at my best friend's place in Sherwood Park, but, yeah, then they have your phone number so that if anything happens while you're not there, they'll call you and tell you, but then you're just on anxiety edge, like, watching your phone, and then the phone rings, and you're just like, "Oh my gosh, what is this news?" And they do have to phone you and just tell you, "Just so you know, Miles did just have another seizure," and you're like, how do you process all of that? You really can't.
Yep.
Just you go
I
into
remember seeing a post of yours about receiving phone calls from
yeah,
the hospital, and, like, when our son was in there, we didn't get any phone calls, and so all I could think about in that moment was, like, when you're in that position, it's almost like you wanna be phoning the hospital. Like,
yeah,
to have to see that number come up on your phone, like, you wanna be the one that's annoying the nurses being like,
yes,
"How's my baby?"
yes.
You know, like, and I'm sure your heart just stopped every time
Yeah, because
you
you're like, "Well,
had to
what are they
see the
gonna
number.
tell me? What are
Yeah.
they telling me this time?" They're not phoning with, "He has made a full recovery, come pick him up and take him home." It's like, it's not gonna be good news, so,
Yeah.
yeah, that was challenging, and then so began our journey. The natologist, though, he was so sweet, and even those first couple days, because Miles was hooked up to everything, he's on, like, fentanyl, morphine, just, like, the poor kid he almost died, so they're
Mhm.
basically trying to bring him back to life. Um,
He's getting the good drugs.
yes, he's getting the good stuff. We're like, "That is the last time he does drugs on our watch," but
Yeah. You learned from this moment.
yeah, this is all you're getting, honey, so soak it up.
How
Um,
long did it take for you guys to get that HIE diagnosis?
it's pretty much instant because that's
Okay.
what if you have lack of oxygen, that is what they call it. It's
Yeah.
so
So they were kind of able to
essentially
give you that right away.
yeah,
Okay.
and I don't know if they did or they were just they do rounds every morning, and we were in
Mhm.
pod A,
Yeah.
so they
I
do
know
it
that
early in the
pod.
morning. Yeah. Were you in pod A?
Bed 2, baby.
Oh, okay. I think we were 3. Oh my gosh, the connection. But they come first to pod A,
Yep.
and so we'd get there really early so that we could hear and they would just use that kind of the medical jargon,
Mhm.
but they are amazing there. Any questions we had or we'd ask, they would explain kind of like what was going on or what all those terms meant. And yeah, the neonatologist was really reassuring in the way of he's like, I know everything looks really scary because you're just, they're hooked up to he had all those, I don't know, so many lines, so many cords.
Yeah.
He's on life support. But he gave us a lot of hope. He's like, essentially, all of the organs will likely heal. It's essentially just the brain with the oxygen that, like, we don't know until we can get an MRI.
Yeah.
But
And how long did you have to wait for an MRI?
so we warmed him up after the 72 hours and held him. I think it was a week after he was born. I think it was a Monday, or he was born on a Tuesday. So around that time, he was warmed up, um, held him, and then essentially they started like he always had the EEGs on his head. Is that the right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He also had
Yeah.
the
His
EEG.
leads on his head. Yeah.
There was lots of leads. There was lots of
Yes.
whatever.
Oh, I can only imagine.
But Jackson is he's engineer mindset, and he would just watch that EEG, and there was like a pamphlet of normal activity, abnormal activity.
Yep. Yep.
And to me, I'm like, that's why even look at that. That's
It's
we're
almost
students
nice,
so
like you
different in
said,
that
to
way.
be blissful in that
Yeah,
moment and not know what everything means. And
yeah.
it's like, just
Like,
let me know if something's really alarming, you know?
you would just, like, stand or sit and watch that, and they were in the lower range, but to me, I'm like, "Let's just wait until we get an MRI or whatever." Like, where you're not a doctor, you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So those are always on, and then once he got warmed up, we held him for the first time after those 72 hours, and
What
then
was that like?
oh, so emotional. I posted it on my
Yeah, I'm
but
I'm watching it right now in my head.
yeah,
Like, oh,
yeah,
so many feels.
cry
No,
break.
don't apologize. You're allowed. Cry breaks are my favorite, okay? It does make you feel lighter.
No, it's obviously not. I pictured it like he had so many cords on him, like it was uncomfortable to hold him. But again, just it's that like complexity of the duality of emotions where you're like, so grateful that I got
Mhm.
that moment, but so much grief in how it looked.
Yep. And I feel very strongly that it doesn't matter, um, you know, if the baby's not here or the baby makes it, you're still grieving, like you said, your Pinterest checklist and what that's
Yeah,
supposed to look like. And like it doesn't take away from any of that, you
yeah.
know?
I know, like before Miles was born, I would cry just thinking of like that moment where you hold your baby for the first time.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just
No one ever believes
picturing it
that
the
that
way
could happen to them.
that it
Yeah.
is, where you're
Yeah.
just push your baby out and they're on your chest and it's this
Hmm.
beautiful magical moment. And when that's taken away from you and it looks so different, it's hard to process
Hmm.
that part of it. And clearly, as you can tell through this podcast, I'm still processing a lot. It's
Yes.
only
And I think you'll be processing forever. And even
yeah,
as you bring like your next baby into the world,
yes,
and I pray that that is the perfect delivery textbook,
yes.
you
I'm like,
know,
I
like,
would prefer a very boring,
yes,
boring
yes.
story ever. I don't want to do another. I love you, Lex. I don't want to do another
Nope.
one.
I don't want to ever have you on here again for this. No.
Like,
My rule is like one time only, okay?
yes,
But I feel like that's going to bring up both types of emotions, right?
yeah,
Like it's going to be healing in a sense, but it's also probably going to bring up so many feelings about
yes,
how different the first one was.
yeah. I agree. It will. I've thought about that too, where I'm
Mhm.
like, it's gonna hopefully be very healing, but I think it will also unlayer different steps in that grief or just realizing
Yeah.
like what I didn't have with Miles.
Are you delivering at the same hospital?
Yes, I am
Okay.
with my OB. So
Yep.
she's
Yep.
like she's very sweet. And I mean she's like every OB appointment she's cried. Too. Like I think
Mm.
like she is like, I need this.
She wants this just
Yeah.
as bad as you do, right? Like they want to be able to give you that perfect
Yeah.
ending.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for.
Yes, so I feel
Um,
very, like, confident in my team
yeah,
going into this next one.
I'm glad. I
Yeah,
think it'll just be hard walking into those same doors, right? And
I
maybe
know,
the
and
same
like,
OR and the
especially right
same
at the
post.
beginning, we're
Yeah.
doing it at, like, 7:30 in the morning, the very first thing, because she's like, "I don't
Yeah.
want you to wait around at all during the day. It's
No.
gonna be you need to just get in and do
Yeah.
it."
Yeah. And go snuggle that baby in the postpartum unit and
Give me the crappy room with the
yeah. Oh baby.
bathroom, I'm good with it as long as I'm going home in a couple days. But yeah,
So
anyway,
how long were you guys in the NICU?
we were in the NICU for 5 weeks.
Hmm.
So yeah, essentially we back where we um then he got his MRI and yeah, then they had to give us the news where you just know that bad news is I was still very, very ignorant because even though the start had looked like that, I'm very much like my life just works out and it's perfect and this
Yeah.
it's just gonna be a little blip, but they're just gonna tell us everything's fine and then
Yeah.
it's just gonna be this little part of his story in the beginning, but we're gonna have no challenges after.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we got into the room, and that really sweet neonatologist, they were all very sweet, but
Mm-hmm.
he
They love
started,
their jobs there.
yeah, I mean, it's hard for them too. I feel for them. No one wants
Yes.
to be in a position to tell parents that news, but he, we went in, they took us to the family room. So right away, you're kind of like, why don't you just come in and tell me that the MRI looks great? Why do we have to go to a separate room?
Mm-hmm.
But, and then you get in there and there's a nurse and there's a social worker and and you're like, there's all these little things that are adding up where you're like, there's too many people in here for this to be good news, but still not believing that they're going to tell me anything.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he essentially just started talking about Miles' birth. And he was like, so as you know, Miles had a difficult start to life. There was a knot in your cord. He was just going through the birth. And I'm like, I know, I just lived it. Why?
Yeah, thanks for the
Yeah.
reminder.
Yes. Um, and everyone's kind of making eye contact, but not, no one, and you're just like, okay, yeah. And then finally the neurologist who was sitting by me, she just, sorry, she just looked at me and said that Miles' brain damage is significant. And I remember crying, but it's weird. Like where I'm crying now and there's tears, but there were no, like I didn't cry any tears, but I was
Mm-hmm.
like gasping.
That was more than what tears could communicate,
Yeah,
right? Like it
yeah,
takes a much larger part of you.
yeah. And I mean, and after that, that's just like your world and it changes.
Mm-hmm. That's a gentle way of putting it.
Yeah, where I don't know, you just as a first time mom, I mean, you're always envisioning like who your child's gonna be, and yeah, but those words just take like all those dreams away.
A split second, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So she basically just still was very sweet and just told us that he'll likely like it's generalized severe, so it's his entire brain is affected and quite severely. So he would likely need help. He's likely going to need help in every area of his life, and we don't know what that's going to look like, but just they have to tell you like this is what we're seeing from the image. And they were very kind in the way of she was like an image is just an image. They weren't like this is his diagnosis and it's black and white. This is what we're seeing on the image. So yes, he's going to need help in his life and his life is probably going to look different than other kids, but what that actually looks like we won't know until he gets older and starts to develop. And so yeah, from there we were just shocked because we felt like we had like after he was warmed up, he breastfed a little bit and we felt like there was no way there was anything wrong. Like
Mm-hmm.
it I don't know, it was very shocking to receive that news. And that's kind of what I remember telling her in the moment. I was like, but he seems like he's doing so well. As I don't
Mm-hmm.
for 2 days after the word, but I'm like, that's not when you think of severe brain damage, I'm not his eyes are opening. He was able to breastfeed today. Like how does he have severe brain damage? And yeah, she just encouraged me. She's like, that's just what you have to do. Just like focus on Miles.
Mm-hmm.
There's
That's your job in that moment is to be Miles's mom,
yeah.
right?
And so that is what we tried to do. We just went home that night and we shell shocked, but we were just like, this is have to just go day by day. And then we got to the NICU the next day and they had phoned me that night, but the hard part was we just gave ourselves that pep talk of like, we just have to, this is what it is. We obviously need to be sad about it, but he's our son. We just have to like love him and get through this and get home and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So we went into the NICU the next day and he was on like all of his life supports again. And we're like, oh my gosh, there's no winning in this. But so yeah, that day we were it wasn't a good day because we're like, our son has severe brain damage and now all of his life supports are back on. So to me, it was just, yeah, that was the worst day because I'm like, what is the quality of life going to look like? If he's not breathing on his own or doing these basic things, like, is that related to his brain injury? Was kind of the question. So he was still there for another few days, but he was getting really sick again, skin really mottled. So they essentially then told us that they weren't kind of equipped to keep caring for him because they didn't know if he would make it, basically. So they were like, we have to transfer you to the Stollery and just see if they can help. So transferred him to the Stollery because they have at the Alex, they don't have a CT scan. So they did that at the Stollery. And then thankfully they found like the reason he got so sick again was because of all the lines in him when they took them out after warming him up because their blood vessels are so tiny.
Mm-hmm.
It nicked one going to his kidney and it nicked one going to his heart. So then the blood wasn't flowing to his right kidney or heart. So then he was in severe heart failure and severe kidney failure. And yeah, then the neonatologist there was basically came in and told us like there was this procedure called ECMO where they essentially give your heart a rest and like there's a pump that pumps your blood. You probably know better, but
Yeah.
it pumps the blood for them outside of their body because he was kind of telling us like his heart was going to fail soon. They didn't figure something out, so we could do that. But because of the severity of his brain injury, they essentially wouldn't recommend it. And I don't know, you just sit and listen. You're like, is there an option? Is there, I don't know, like.
Yeah, so there's 3 options, but they're all bad options.
Yeah,
Like, what's the
they're all.
least bad option here? Like, please help.
And we were just kind of like, whatever. I'm not equipped to make any kind of decision. So he said they were going to start with once they found the clots. And he's like, okay, at least we have an answer as to why. So now we can start on anticoagulants. But again, the issue being the severity of the brain injury because his brain was bleeding. Like they took another MRI kind of throughout doing the anticoagulants and before just to see. And there was kind of tiny pinpoints of brain bleeding all throughout. So they're like, we need to do anticoagulants to break up these clots. Otherwise, his heart's going to fail. But there is a risk because we're putting on blood thinners that like his brain, because it is actively bleeding, can bleed more and like bleed out. So it was just, I don't know. You get news like that and talking about it, it sounds so intense and it was, but you just kind of sit there and you're like, okay, well, let's
You're
try
like, well,
it.
save him.
Let's
Like, I
yeah,
don't know what
let's
else you
see
want me
what
to say.
happens. Yeah. So obviously it ended up working. So good job. Go team. Go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
And then, yeah, so they ended up breaking up the clots. That took a while. It was just like shots in his leg and was still on all of his drugs. So then they started there was lots of other things that happened. I'd have to honestly go back on my Instagram stories and look. But then they had to wean him off of like fentanyl and morphine and stuff before going home. And that was hard and sad because you're like he was having withdrawals and your tiny little baby is having drug withdrawals and then you're having to watch just him go through that was hard. And then just working on feeding. We got to go home after 5 weeks.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Please take a moment and on whatever app you're listening to us on, press that follow button to stay up to date with all future episodes. If you or someone you know are interested in being a guest on the Beyond the Birth Story podcast or a sponsor, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at Beyond the Birth Story podcast and send a message or fill out that contact form. I would love to connect with you. As always, remember to be gentle, kind, and hold space for yourself when you need it.